Paul Finebaum's been pretty positive about the Georgia Bulldogs this season and the last couple of years, really, and I can attest to that because we've talked about it before. And he made a statement a couple of days ago that I think is interesting. The word choice is interesting, and I actually think his word choice makes sense here. He called Georgia vulnerable. This is what he said. I think they're vulnerable. What I'm impressed with is Georgia is the number of times that they've been tested and now passed. But this is in no way a standalone team that is not unbeatable. We know that. And look, that's true. Yeah, that's a true statement. I think that that's kind of an easy statement to make. But calling Georgia vulnerable, he goes on to talk about how Lane Kiffin, he has some wild card games like the Alabama game where the Rebels only score 10 points. But then there are games where he can call a perfect game. And that is true. Lane Kiffin is one of the best offensive minds in the sport. A lot of people will tell you that. Kirby Smart will tell you that. And look, him and Kirby are friends, right? I think they definitely have a relationship outside of Lane and Kirby texting me in our group chat right now. I apologize for the noise there. But they have a relationship outside of this thing. Kirby spoke on the relationship a little bit before. Calling Georgia vulnerable versus Ole Miss, I think, is interesting. And the reason I say this is because I feel confident about Georgia winning this game. I feel pretty confident about Georgia winning this game. But Paul is right. This team can lose at any point. And I think that we've been pretty clear about talking about that with you guys on here. Look, this Georgia team is not invincible. The 2021 team, as elite as it was, as good as it was, proved that they weren't invincible when they lost the SEC championship against Alabama, right? And then you move on to 22. 15-0 seems kind of invincible, right? And playing really well on your way to 15-0, winning the national championship by a record number makes a team seem invincible. But the Kent State game was hard for Georgia. The Missouri game was hard for Georgia. The Kentucky game was hard for Georgia. The Ohio State game was hard for Georgia. And that's been the case more so already in 2023. The Auburn game was very hard for Georgia. The UAB game was not hard, but some of these cupcake games, you think they weren't slapping around people as much as you would think that they need to. But this Missouri game was hard for Georgia. The South Carolina game was hard for Georgia. So we're saying that already, where we haven't had a full season yet, and we're saying that just as many times, if not more, than we did last season. So yes, this Georgia team is vulnerable, and I agree with what Paul Finebaum's saying. 5-star Georgia fans, sign up for the link down below. 5-star Georgia fans. You want to be a high-level Georgia fan, you'll type in your email in the link down below in the description. If you want premium, free, insider stories, everything we're giving it to you in the inbox every single day, every single afternoon. You're going to get a notification with all that information. And I didn't mean to rhyme there. I didn't mean to spit that bar for you guys. Some of you are going to think that was corny. That was completely right out of there. Ryan Curley, by the way, thanks for watching again. Just wanted to put that out there. I've got Ole Miss, and I'm going to discuss a little bit more about this, but I want to talk about the defense for Ole Miss as well, which, yes, has a great turnover margin, but vulnerable defense. Now, 49 points against LSU, and then 35 against Texas A&M are the ones that you point to in this thing. Now, you can kind of waive the LSU deal because LSU's putting that number up on like everybody, right? And even putting it up, however many they put up against Alabama in a short amount of time, right? 28 points in the third quarter. So, and that's against a pretty good Alabama defense, a solid Alabama defense, I would say. It's not elite. I don't know that there is an elite defense in college football this year, or just really high level. We don't know about Michigan's yet. We don't know. We'll learn a little bit. We'll learn a little bit on Saturday, but I also don't think Penn State's offense is very fruitful. So maybe we won't learn as much as we think we will about Michigan this week. Back to Ole Miss and Georgia. Is Georgia vulnerable to lose to Ole Miss? Yes. It's a very good Ole Miss team. This is maybe the best Ole Miss team that Kiffin's had now, and they're playing well. I mean, I think that they've teetered off a little bit, to be honest with you, because last week against Texas A&M, they let them come back into that game and have a chance in that game. Vanderbilt, whatever, right? I kind of look at the Vanderbilt game for Georgia as kind of like, same deal with Ole Miss. Similar score against Auburn, also at Auburn. So that's one that's very easy to compare between the two. Look, Ole Miss probably looked better against Auburn than Georgia did, if I'm giving the credit. But they didn't look great. And you get the LSU win. But to me, this Ole Miss team has been... I don't know that it's a super strong one-loss team because Tulane's not great. Tech's not great. LSU at this point has now lost 3 games. Is it just because they're playing better teams? Well, I mean, is Ole Miss that much better than LSU? I know that Ole Miss won that at home, but LSU losing to Bama and Florida State. So maybe LSU's just not who... Look, not maybe. LSU's just not who we thought they were. Arkansas, not great. Auburn, kind of a mid-SEC team this year. Vanderbilt, not great. A&M, a team who I am lower on than others. A&M, now sitting at 5-4 after that loss. They have fought against good teams. A&M this year is similar to Arizona in the Pac-12, where the win-loss record's not going to tell you that they're great, but they're fighting hard against the really good teams and only losing by small margins against the really good teams. So A&M is kind of similar to Arizona in that point, but it doesn't mean that team's that great. They're losing all those games for a reason, and that's kind of my point here with Ole Miss is, yes, they're ranked number 9 at this point in time, but I actually think Missouri's a better football team than Ole Miss. That's my hot take. That's my hot take. I trust Brady Cook more than I trust Jackson Dart. I think that Missouri's best weapon is better than Ole Miss's best weapon. And I think Missouri's got a very active defensive line. Ole Miss also does. But the thing about this is when I'm going through the schedule, and kind of my point here about how many points they're allowing, is I just don't think Georgia's would allow 35 points to Texas A&M. And to be honest with you, I don't think they'd allow 50 to LSU. Now, that's also a bold statement because this Georgia defense has shown 21 points to Missouri, 20 points to Auburn, 14 to South Carolina, 21 to UAB. You get the point. 20 to Vanderbilt. So those teams aren't really breaking the 20-point threshold so much, and that's happened only twice against Ole Miss. But I'm telling you right now, Georgia would not allow 50 points to LSU. I think they'd hit 40 maybe, or 30, but 50, I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing Georgia get bullied like that on the defensive side of the football. And that's what I think it will take for Ole Miss. Now, rounding out to my real point here, that's what I think it would take for Ole Miss to beat Georgia, is scoring a ton of points. Because if Georgia can control the pace and control how they want the game to go, and they hit that 30-point mark, like we say, when Georgia hits 30, they rarely lose, if at all, under Kirby Smart. Go look at the numbers. If Georgia hits 30 points, they just don't really lose. And Georgia's going to be able to score on this Ole Miss defense. It's a similar to last week. If Georgia can score on Missouri, which they were able to do a little bit, if Georgia can score against Ole Miss, they're at home. This is going to be an elite environment, I think, on Saturday. I think you're going to see potentially a top-tier environment for Georgia football. With game day coming to town, Ole Miss, a team that used to play Georgia every single year, no longer does. Right? That was way back when. That stopped, 10, 15 years ago? The Georgia and Ole Miss stopped playing so much. Ole Miss people, I hear Ole Miss travels. I hear they've been traveling throughout the week already. It's going to be a high-level environment. Last game of the season, don't be surprised if Brock Bowers, I'm telling you right now, Brock Bowers is, I think, going to be out there for a few snaps. I'm hearing certain people are going to be around town. So I think it's going to be a really big weekend. Is Georgia vulnerable? It would be, Ole Miss would be, I was going to say something inappropriate, so I can't say it. But Ole Miss would be messing with the party. They'd be the party poopers. I was going to say something a lot worse. They would be the party poopers if they came into town and beat Georgia. So does that make them vulnerable? Off the field, yes, in that sense, it does make it vulnerable. And I do agree with what Paul Finebaum's saying about how this team is vulnerable. Every team in college football is vulnerable right now. There is no elite number one team that has separated itself from the rest of the pool, in my opinion. I do think the Dogs are the best team in the country, but it's not like the last 2 years where it was like, okay, Georgia's definitely the best team in the country. You can't refute that. It's not the same. And so, yes, vulnerable, yes. Will they lose? I don't think so. Thanks for watching.